Before Anthrax. Is there a before Anthrax? Didn't life begin on July 18th, 1981 in so many ways for so many people? For me, I started playing guitar when I was 8 years old, I think. So somewhere around 71.
I actually first met Scott on opposing sides of the volleyball net in gym class. Thrash metal that wasn't even around then. It was more like, wow, so somebody else who appears to have long hair and like hard rock and metal.
Long-haired kids, leather jackets. We had our little corner of the lunchroom. Nobody bothered with us.
We realized that we both liked hard driving, aggressive music, however you wanted to call it. And we discovered we had that in common.
And he lived 2 blocks away from me. So we would walk to school back and forth every day together. Danny was the best musician I knew, and he was in a real band.
That was a band called White Heat. I was like 14. We did like Van Halen and Led Zeppelin and originals.
And he's playing in a band that already plays gigs in Manhattan. For a kid from Queens, that's like, you made it.
Metal was basically just starting to coalesce as a genre and be, loosely defined as such.
Walking home from school one day, he tells me how he learned about this thing called anthrax. I believe in his biology class. He's like, it's some kind of spore. It's super deadly. Like if you breathe it, you'll die. I'm like, wow, that sounds cool. That sounds like a great metal band name.
Heavy metal of this genre, this aggressive power metal, thrash metal.
There was all these amazing bands, but they were all from overseas. They were from the UK, they were from Europe.
When you hear Motorhead, it's a fast record, but it's a fast record played by older veterans of music.
There was a whole new mutation.
The faster metal gets, the better it is if you're skating.
And the answer was it was going to be faster. It was going to be louder. It was going to be heavier.
Iron Man is not necessarily your soundtrack for ripping it up at a half pipe.
And that's really where the thrash scene started.
There was the stuff going on, like Kerrang! Magazine. I started reading that.
The thrash scene, largely started in Southern California, and you had your bands like Metallica, which really started it all, and then Slayer and Metallica spun off into Megadeth. Here on the East Coast, where I'm from, there was really one band at the time that you were hearing about, and it was Anthrax.
Long before they were even a known rock band, I just knew them as these guys that played in a band.
Just starting playing like regular heavy metal, Priest and Maiden covers.
As much as I loved sitting and playing guitar, it was always more fun to be able to sit and play, jam with somebody else.
We all would see each other around New York City and in Manhattan. Our common bond was the fact that we were all big Kiss fans.
December 14th, 1977, seeing Kiss at Madison Square Garden that night, literally that changed my life. I literally walking out of Madison Square Garden that night, I'm still walking that same path because I walked out of that show knowing I'm going to do this. I'm going to be in a band. I have no choice. Like Gene, Paul, Ace, and Peter have made the decision for me.
A few years later, after we got Charlie and heard Metallica, we became more of what people would have known as Anthrax now. It was used to be just, neighborhood kids just having fun in a garage, and it just progressed from there. So I made it past the garage stage at least. The Fistful of Metal lineup would have been Neil Turbin on vocals, Scott and Danny Spitz on guitar, Charlie Benanti, and me.
I knew Scott from being in a class with him in school and seeing him in school, and Danny as well. Never really hung out before.
He was singing in bands, again, that played in the city. That's where you wanted to be. And Neil was one of those dudes, kind of had his toes already in that world.
Actually, I joined the band. The first thing we did was we did a show at Great Gildersleeves. They had booked a show 2 weeks out. I had to hurry up and learn the songs they had.
When you first start, it's just fun, but then you realize this is something you really want to do and take very seriously, and not everyone else around you was really into that. Maybe they were just, had a girlfriend or a job and doing this was fun, but they weren't going to jam 5 nights a week or anything. As things progressed and we started doing shows, we'd run into other people at metal shows who would eventually end up being in the band.
The best thing always was if you could actually find someone who had a drum kit. Most kids didn't have drum sets in their 1 or 2 bedroom apartments in Queens.
I had some mutual friends who knew some of those guys from in Queens. I was living in the Bronx. I know this person, you know that person. Hey, that band, they're looking for a drummer. What do you think? And I'm like, yeah, that would be cool. I'll give it a shot.
Charlie was always a musician from when he was 4 years old. He was that was a God gift. That it's always been amazing to watch Charlie play drums.
Scott and Danny Loker, came over my house.
We were looking for someone who could play fast double bass.
And we just jammed, and we had fun just kind of playing these songs that I wouldn't necessarily have played these songs with people that I knew.
Even in those early days, Charlie, Danny, Loker, and I, we really kind of had that unspoken language of playing together and how we played together.
There was this band called Accept from Germany who I fucking loved, and they had this album called Restless and Wild, and there was a song on it called Fast as a Shark, and at the time it was like the fastest double kick. And I said, you guys aren't going to want to play that song, right? And then I saw them look at each other, and they were like, can you play it? And I was like, yeah. And we played Fast as a Shark. And I think that was it. I think that was the moment that everything just kind of clicked.
Right after that, we got Danny Spitz.
I went to work selling guitars on the famous 48th Street in Manhattan. The repairman, he said to me, there's this one dude that comes in, man. He's got like 50 Marshall cabinets, and you got 50 Marshall cabinets, and whatever band you're in, Spitz, you got to lend half your crap to that guy because he's got no money. And I waited, I don't know how long it was, maybe a couple weeks or so. Scott came in, I think to fix his leopard guitar. And I said, dude, man, let me come down. I'll tear your face out.
Spitz and I, we were tough. We were fucking pretty hard dudes. We both had very strong vision.
And I packed all those 9 Marshalls in a van, and I drove from Rockland County all the way out where they were rehearsing. All he said to me was, do you know anything by the band Riot? Neil Turbin, that's his favorite singer. Like, if you just play 3 riffs by that, you're in. It was a natural thing where we all played, and it sounded cohesive. It sounded like nothing else.
I was in art school at the time, too, but this is what I wanted. This is what I kind of was working towards my whole life. And the same with the artwork, too. I always felt those 2 things were going to take me out of it.
Everything else became secondary. Comic books became secondary. Skateboarding, secondary. Horror, sci-fi, everything came second to music.
We would rehearse sometimes 7 nights a week. I guess it didn't feel like work because we loved what we were doing.
It consumed us. We were also going to shows nonstop. I mean, obviously one of the perks of living in New York City is everyone plays New York City.
Like Johnny Z started doing shows there in the East Coast. So we started seeing bands like Raven and Anvil.
Meeting Johnny Z was another thing. That was another part of the puzzle.
Anthrax were a royal pain in the ass, by the way.
We were trying to get some traction, get Johnny Z to be interested in the band and kind of move it forward.
We signed a lot of bands in Megaforce, but it wasn't easy to find them because they had to make the hair stand on my arm.
We would bring flyers because we would always have some gig coming up. So you try and hand out flyers to people, hand out demo tapes.
Now, I must tell you, these demos were interesting, but they weren't on the money.
We went and we recorded a number of demos. I would say that there was at least 3 demos.
They came to our stand at Rock and Roll Heaven in the flea market all the time, and they always had demos.
We would take his advice because we were listening, we respected his opinion on this stuff.
They were lovable characters, Neil was lovable, Dan Loca was very lovable.
I think we started making more of an impression once we got like Charlie in the band, 82, 83, when we really started ramping stuff up, playing more shows around the area. When Metallica came around, we played some shows with them.
People saw the energy, people felt the energy and the vibe. After a while, just hanging out, you have to know the songs because it's embedded in your brain.
You felt that they could pull it off somehow, but they didn't till the International House of Pancakes.
How good? Like, are we ready? Are we ready? Like, are we going to do this?
They're really disturbing me. They really got on my nerves when they came to me at that House of Pancakes.